Joseph Big Joey Massino was born on January 10, 1943, and from an early age his life bent toward the shadows. He rose through the Bonanno crime family with a patience and calculation that set him apart, becoming a trusted protege of Philip Rusty Rostelli and, eventually, one of the most powerful mafia figures in New York. In June 1977, Massino was formally inducted into the Bonannos in a ceremony overseen by Carmine Galante, pledging loyalty in a world where allegiance was sealed in blood. He served first as a soldier, then as a captain, navigating a treacherous landscape of ambition, betrayal, and shifting alliances while never losing sight of his ultimate aim: survival and supremacy. The Bonanno family in the late 1970s and early 1980s was tearing itself apart. Rival factions maneuvered for control as Rostelli languished in prison and Galante loomed as a threat to anyone who defied him. Massino proved his worth by acting decisively and without hesitation. When permission was granted to eliminate Galante, the execution sent a shockwave through the underworld and cleared the path for Rostelli's dominance. Massino was rewarded, elevated, and unleashed. From his base near the J.N.S. Cake Social Club, he tightened his grip, eliminating rivals with cold precision. The triple murder of 3 rebellious captains in 1981 cemented his reputation, and the later killing of Dominic "Sonny Black" Napolitano erased a former ally whose judgment Massino no longer trusted after the disastrous Donnie Brasco infiltration exposed the family to unprecedented humiliation. By the mid-1980s, Massino was effectively running the Bonanno family, even as indictments, trials, and prison sentences chipped away at the organization. He endured convictions, served time, and returned each time more cautious, more disciplined, and more determined to rule differently from the bosses who fell before him. When Rostelli finally died in 1991, Massino was acclaimed boss without opposition. At 48, he was young by Mafia standards and intent on avoiding the fate of men like John Gotti, whose flamboyance invited destruction. Massino operated quietly, obsessively guarding against surveillance. His name was not spoken aloud, men touched their ears instead. Meetings were held in remote places, sometimes overseas, disguised as family vacations. Social clubs were shuttered, and communication was compartmentalized into secretive cells. To many, he became known as the Ear, and to others, the last of the old-time gangsters. Under Massino, the Bonannos surged back to prominence. Once exiled from the Mafia Commission, they became the most powerful family in New York, in part because their leadership had survived when others were shattered by prosecutions. Massino centralized authority while decentralizing exposure, ruling through committees and messengers, trusting blood ties over ambition. He encouraged fathers to bring sons into the life, believing that shared fate would ensure loyalty. For a time, it worked. For decades, the Bonannos boasted that no made man had ever turned informant. That illusion shattered in the early 2000s. Financial investigations tightened, and the threat of life sentences loomed. One by one, trusted men broke. Frank Cappa flipped. Richard Cantarella followed. Others soon joined them, unraveling the carefully constructed secrecy Massino had spent a lifetime perfecting. In January 2003, Massino himself was arrested, indicted on sweeping racketeering charges that reached back decades and included multiple murders. Denied bail, he watched from behind bars as Vincent "Vinny Gorgeous" Besciano took over as acting boss and the walls closed in. The trial that began in May 2004 was historic. Prosecutors called an unprecedented parade of turncoats, men who had once sworn eternal loyalty now calmly describing killings, orders, and secrets. Massino sat stone-faced as his own brother-in-law, Salvatore Vitali, testified against him, mapping his entire criminal career. The jury deliberated for days before returning guilty verdicts on every count. Massino faced life in prison, and worse. For the murder of Gerlando George from Canada Shasha, prosecutors sought the death penalty. The unthinkable loomed, the execution of a New York Mafia boss. Within hours of the verdict, the man once considered untouchable made a decision that shattered a century-old taboo. In September 2004, Joseph Massino offered to cooperate. He became the first sitting boss of one of New York's 5 families to turn state's evidence. He recorded conversations, even with Besciano, capturing confessions that sealed other men's fates. Graves were unearthed. Long-buried secrets surfaced. The wolf pack he had led dissolved into whispers and plea agreements. In June 2005, Massino formally pled guilty and received 2 consecutive life sentences, with the possibility of reduction in exchange for cooperation. His empire was stripped away, millions in cash, gold bars hidden in his home, businesses surrendered to the government. Over the following years, he testified selectively, helping prosecutors secure convictions while hoping, as he put it, to see a light at the end of the tunnel. His health declined, and time softened the edges of his punishment. In 2013, a federal judge reduced his sentence to time served, citing his unprecedented cooperation and failing condition. Joseph "Big Joey" Massino vanished into the Witness Protection Program, living under an assumed name far from the streets he once ruled. On September 14, 2023, at the age of 80, he died quietly in a rehabilitation facility near New York City. The man once hailed as the last Don left behind a legacy defined not only by power and bloodshed, but by the final, irreversible act of betrayal that marked the end of an era.